want to bring Cliff Albright into this conversation, co-founder and executive director of Black Voters Matter. Can you once again frame this as a voting rights issue, as a massive violation of voting rights in Georgia, this RICO case that's been brought against the President of the United States, his chief of staff, what they did in your state of Georgia?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. To be clear, we have to be honest that what Trump was attacking, what this entire conspiracy, because we should all be very clear, wasn't just Trump, right? At least 19 co-conspirators, even more that are unindicted at this point. But what they were attacking wasn't even necessarily all voters of Georgia. I mean, in the big picture, it was all voters. It was the entire country. But they were specifically going after Black voters, right? They were specifically upset about Fulton County voters, right? The same way that they were upset about Pennsylvania, but they were really upset about Philadelphia, the same way they were upset about Michigan, but they were really upset just about Detroit. And so, this attack on voters overall, but in particular targeted at Black voters, we can't underestimate the scale of it. Even if we look at one aspect of it, the until recently underreported aspect of the Coffee County break-in, the breach in the security systems. Again, this is a county which had a history of suppressing Black votes, of attacking Black activists like Olivia Coley Pearson, who, by the way, the Georgia Raffensperger, Secretary of State, and GBI spent more time and resources investigating one woman, Olivia Pearson, in Coffee County, just for helping people, illiterate voters, to be able to vote than they have spent investigating the Coffee County breach, right? And so all of this we have got to put in the context of the wider suppression of Black votes and the wider risk to our voting systems and to this entire democracy. What happens in one county or in one state could, in fact, jeopardize the entire nation.
Can you talk, Cliff Albright, about what's happening at two levels with an attack on Fani Willis herself, the Fulton County DA? You have the beginning of this legal battle between Georgia Republicans and Willis as they may potentially try to remove her from office using Senate Bill 92. The law signed by Governor Brian Kemp states that a prosecutor can be removed for, quote, conduct prejudicial to the administration of justice, which brings the office into disrepute. Can you talk about that? And most recently, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, chair of the House Judiciary Committee, right, the U.S. Congress, announcing he's opening an inquiry into Willis, questioning whether she had collaborated with the Biden administration in targeting any federal funding her office receives. So she'll be taking on these investigations at the same time she's bringing this RICO conspiracy case against the 19, including the former president.
Yeah, and of course you've got those two threats, which are legal and administrative threats, but then you've also got the other threats that we also know about, right? The physical threats, the intimidation, the threats of violence, which is a whole nother story. But just in terms of like those two political threats, you'd like to not even take the Jim Jordan threat seriously. I mean, he's trying to, threatening to subpoena her. What we know is that that's not going to go anywhere. She's under no obligation to respond to that. But what we also know is that to a certain extent, not only is he trying to protect Trump, he's possibly even trying to protect himself. He's been kind of implicated in some of these overall conspiracy, not the actual charges that have been filed, but just in terms of his overall involvement in this plan and some of the White House meetings and so on and so forth. The far more serious one, though, other than the federal one that Jordan is leading, is the state version, which at the time we all knew, many of us, including myself, warned that this was being targeted directly at Fani Willis. It was also being directed at other DAs that Republicans in the state feel aren't being, quote unquote, tough on crime, that they're not enforcing the harshest sentences, that they're not enforcing or going aggressively after marijuana cases. Also has been targeted at DAs that have said that they wouldn't be aggressive in enforcing abortion rules and laws. That goes for Georgia as well as Florida, as well as elsewhere. But when Georgia in particular announced this law and went after it, what we knew was that they had Fonnie Willis squarely in their targets. And that's exactly what we're seeing, right? And so we could very well see a situation where this state, where, by the way, Trump, as you've reported on, Trump cannot receive a pardon from the governor in this state. So the only way for them to really derail this is to derail the actual charges and the actual litigation. And that's what they're trying to do by threatening Fonnie Willis. It's important because it speaks to a point that I've said several times. There's more than one way to overturn an election. Right. The Trump investigation is one way that they tried to overturn an election, but we are seeing time and time again with DAs, with mayors, with city councils, with legislators, as you just talked about earlier in the show in terms of Tennessee, that they are finding ways to overturn elections by simply removing people from offices, DAs and others, restricting their jurisdiction so that they don't get to control as much territory. See Jackson, Mississippi, right, creating a whole new jurisdiction, or in some cases simply limiting their powers to be able to investigate or take certain actions and preempting certain laws. There's more than one way to overturn an election, and Black voters and Black communities have been experiencing this long before Trump stepped on the scene.
And Cliff Albright, I'd like to go back to something you mentioned earlier, the Coffee County incident that is one of the central parts of this RICO indictment. Could you, for those people who are not aware, talk more specifically about what is alleged that happened in Coffee County on the part of some of the Trump supporters and campaign folks?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's a complicated piece of the puzzle that a lot of people really still don't understand. Want to give a shout out to Marilyn Marks, Coalition for Good Governance, that did a lot of great work. A lot of people wouldn't know, the country wouldn't know what happened in Coffee County if not for litigation and activism that was already taking place in that county, even before some of these federal investigations and state investigations started. But to put simply, what happened was that you had local officials in Coffee County who allegedly gave an invite to certain Trump-related agents, including, of all people, cyber ninjas that many of us know of in Arizona, but gave invites for them to come in and inspect the computer systems and the softwares and the voter information in Coffee County. We know that officials from the Secretary of State's office, Georgia investigators, actually came into the office at a time when you had unauthorized agents in the very office where there's not supposed to be any other access other than the county election officials, but there are people in that office and they knew it. It's on video, but nothing was done. No investigation had been started at the state level. Why this is so dangerous and why it's part of the overall conspiracy is because of the nature of Georgia's election systems and the ways that the state mandates the machines and the systems for the entire state and the ways that they are connected. Just coming in the door in Coffee County doesn't just get you access to Coffee County voters. The way that our friends Marilyn has put it and others have put it is that picture the Georgia election systems and voter information as being a safe that has 159 doors to get into the safe. That's 159 counties in the state of Georgia. You can get into that safe through any one of those doors, but once in, you have access to the entire system. So it's not just that they breached Coffee County, they breached the entire state. And in doing so, they put this entire election at risk and future elections, because mind you, the state of Georgia is still using, they've not changed anything in the system. So our upcoming 2024 elections are still using the same system that we know has been breached.